Well, I've been streaming Pokemon lately, and I thought, what better way to celebrate Pokeweary than to boot up my DS and play one of the most popular selling games in Nintendo's lifespan, Nintendogs, best friends. I picked a golden retriever, and I tried to name it a Pokemon, something like approximate, so I called it Psyduck. You have to talk into the DS and say the name of the dog. So I'd be like, Psyduck. And then it would turn and be like, woof. And that's when I closed the game and I started playing Pokemon Arceus again because I had played fucking Nintendogs. Uh, there's no secret. I've been really digging deep into Pokemon Legends Arceus. Me and Spencer are going to talk about it soon on his channel, RPG Archive. So I don't want to say too much, but I will say this is perhaps my favorite Pokemon game I've ever played. It addresses a lot of the concerns that Brian had brought up about like TMs and HMs. There's none of that. You can change your moves freely from any Pokemon on your team menu. You don't lose them. You can go back to them. There are no TMs. In some ways, it's a more simplified version of your typical Pokemon experience. And also, like the ways that it's simplified is like one is the TMs are easier. There's no HMs. You can like ride Pokemon like in various ways, and like this really like this kind of like it's not totally open world. It's not Breath of the Wild style, but you have like basically like 5 open areas that you can explore with tons of different Pokemon roaming the land. And you're kind of like a hunter-gatherer. It takes you back to simpler times in the Sinnoh region, which is Gen 4. It's a lot of Gen 4 representation. You start off the game, the first Pokemon you see, aside from your starters, are Bidoofs and Starlies. Dumbest freaking Pokemon, but it's just funny seeing it. And Spencer had brought up that to get through this, he had to retrain his brain to like how he plays Pokemon game. And that's very much true. Within the first hour, I was like, figuring out what I'm doing. Like you're supposed to be going like crouching in grass and throwing Pokeballs at the back of Pokemon when they're not facing you. It's like a stealth game. It's really cool. And it benefits your whole party. You should be catching multiple Pokemon. Each one has research entries. You're basically a field researcher. You're discovering the first Pokemon in this world. And you have to complete challenges like find out what they're weak to or see them use certain moves. And it's really rewarding. It's rewarding in terms of like XP and stuff for the party, but also it's just like getting the dex entries. It feels like a earned challenge. It's not, in the previous games, it's as simple as like just catch a Pokemon and then you get the dex entry. No, you have to actually learn about them. Everything feels kind of earned here. Even like finding like a rare Pokemon just wandering the wildlands is really cool. And then I also like this kind of immediacy about it. So, you throw your Pokeball at the Pokemon and then you just catch it and you just move on. There's no nicknaming. There's no read the dex entry. There's no, would you like to fight? There's no cutscenes. It's just fluid action. Now, is there room for improvement? Absolutely. It's, you can see there's pop-in effects when you're flying across the terrain and grass starts like appearing on one half of the screen but not the other. But it's not nearly as bad as Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Another thing is it does use the XP share system, so your whole team is leveling up at the same time. I actually don't mind that because if you turn that off, which I don't think you can, this game would easily stretch out from a 25-hour game to like 100 hours, which are you really playing a Pokemon game for that long? There's like these huge Pokemon on the field, so like I know for Alex you liked with Sword and Shield kind of the open area. It's basically that like times 5. And it's a really significant game. Arceus has always been kind of like a mythological kind of creature within the series. You couldn't even catch him legitimately in the States, in North America, because the event was canceled for like Diamond and Pearl and Platinum. So to have a whole game that's focused on Arceus is actually really significant. I found that this game kind of went under people's radar. They just never got it, and they never really talked about it. They really focus on mainline games for some reason. But it's really a missed opportunity because or like for fans, because I think it does some of the things the best that I've ever seen in the series. It's just so much fun going around, exploring, finding new Pokemon, catching them, seeing them in action, picking your team. And it's different. It's unique, but I really like it.
The time of recording this, I haven't played Scarlet or Violet yet, or this game. So I'm curious. I guess my point of reference would be Sword and Shield. But how does the narrative of this game stand up to the current Pokemon narratives? at least in terms of Sword and Shield, because I think that game had a bit of a weak narrative.
Oh, this is a concrete framework. It's not that I think you'll make any big attachments to any characters, and I mean, there are some cliches, but I think that the premise is really cool. You get dropped out of the freaking sky in the first cutscene, and you end up in this like Japanese feudal town, and everyone looks at you as kind of a foreigner. And so you have this kind of stigma, but you join this like security corps where your job is to help them investigate and research Pokemon to learn to live with them because they're living in fear of them, of fucking Bidoofs, like of these stupid beavers. And it's funny, but it's also it's really like a novelty. And like in the beginning, there's a bit of exposition and like a lot to read. I was doing it on stream, so I was reading aloud, so it actually took longer. But then once that drops, you're basically free to roam. And I think the premise that you are a researcher is a solid framework. So I think narratively it holds up. It's not the most mind-blowing, of course not. It's a Pokemon game, but it's good. Believable, I guess, like I can immerse
it sounds
myself
like it
in
gives
this.
you. I say it sounds like it gives you more of a reason to care than in Sword and Shield, where it's just like, your best friend's here, and his brother is a guy, and now there's an evil dude or something.
Yeah, basically. There's some of that, but it's not to the extent where that's the main freaking thing you're thinking about.
Okay.
Eddie, I obviously don't want to ask you too much because we're going to have a little discussion about it. But just as an offhand, I know you have some interesting opinions. What is your thoughts on them talking about this is Breath of the Wild for Pokemon?
No, definitely. Well, I mean, like you can see the inspiration. Like it's clear that like they adopted or adapted the Breath of the Wild formula, but it also feels formulaic in some extents. So, I mean, one, it's for some reason Nintendo or Game Freak is getting a little bit lazy with how much money they're actually putting into these. You can see like the frame rate of some Pokemon. Like I think of some like a Staravia flying, and then like you see 3 frame pixels. It's wing down, wing mid, wing up, wing mid. It's really funny seeing that. So from a technical level, I actually don't think it's as impressive. You see Pokemon, like I began to notice this after like hour maybe 20 or 30. They're plotted very specifically on the grid. A very specific amount of space away from each other. And you can tell that that's just kind of like, I don't know if that's lazy programming, but it's very specific programming. And then, obviously it's not one big world. You do have to go between worlds, but it's like 5 big worlds in a hub. So it's not Breath of the Wild per se. But I also don't think it's trying to be like, get the shrines or pick which path you're going to go. I think this is very much a Pokemon experience.
I agree.
Any questions?
Not questions per se, but it seems interesting. I watched a little Teddy stream this, and I like the look of it. I didn't find the graphics look bad. I thought they looked pretty good. And I like the idea that, like Teddy said, you could select what skills you wanted on your Pokemon in the menu. I like that all the time, so it gets rid of the TMs I was talking about. And I like that you said, like, it's like before they learned how to tame Pokemon, they're like all scared of them. I like that kind of aspect of it. So it looked interesting. I wish I could have caught more of it.
Yeah, I think it's actually really attainable too. Like if you do play a future one, I think this one's honestly worth trying. There's, I didn't finish the simplifications, but there's no held items. There's no abilities, so you don't have to be thinking about all this stuff. It's just the type matchups. Also, for you, this is really good. It tells you what moves are effective, super effective, or not effective to Pokemon on the field, even if you haven't seen them.
I like that.
Yeah. And that's all I want to say for now on Arceus. We'll be back to talk about it later.
All right.
Hey y'all, don't forget to subscribe to them button mappers.